Welcome to another episode. Today's question is, what is Plato's cave theory? What is Plato's cave theory? Plato's cave theory is a hypothetical situation. Don't look for how it is happening, but what happens, the principle behind it. We will explain the principle also behind it. Try to understand that and try the analogy between the theoretical situation and the reality of our day-to-day life. It is in Plato's cave theory, in that hypothetical situation, there are people who are chained to a rock, and they are all facing the inside a cave. This rock is inside a cave, and these people are chained to a piece of rock, huge piece of rock, and they are facing the wall, not the cave entrance. And there is light behind them. They see the shadows on the wall. All along their life they are like that, from the birth till now. Now they are grown up. They have never seen outside world. The only reality they see is the shadows on the wall, and somehow they get their food there. So this is the situation of the cave. So why Plato imagines this situation, this hypothetical situation? This is to explain the people who believe knowledge comes from the empirical evidence, the external world, through our senses. He wants to show that the people who are entrapped there, the people who are chained to the rock, they are tied to the empirical knowledge, the knowledge of the senses. And the cave represents the misunderstanding of these people. That is what he tries to show. So that is, we have seen this cave, the people chained there. So he analyzes them, the cave as the cave of misunderstanding, the people who are chained there as the people who are believing that what they receive through the senses is true. That misunderstanding chains them. So this is what happens. So these guys are watching only shadows, because behind the rock there is fire, and from that this shadows are visible on the wall. Anybody who is passing outside the cave, any animal which is wandering outside the cave entrance, all that are projected into that shadows, and that becomes their reality, and they give names to these shadows. Socrates explains how the philosopher is like a prisoner who is freed from the caves, and to understand the shadows in the wall are not reality at all. Once a prisoner escapes, one prisoner, due to wisdom, he breaks the chain, comes to the entrance and sees the outside world and sees the reality rather than the manufactured reality of the shadows. The inmates never leave to desire, they never desire to leave the prison, because they are accustomed to it. They do not know any better life. And the one who breaks, he understands the reality was not what he thought it was. Like the fire that casts light on the walls of the cave, the human condition is forever bound to the impressions received through senses. Even if these interpretations are an absurd misrepresentation of reality, we cannot somehow break from the bonds of our human condition. We cannot free ourselves from the phenomenal state, just as free themselves from the chains. If, however, we were to miraculously escape from our bondage, we would find a world we could understand. The sun is incomprehensible for someone who has never seen it. Socrates suggests that shadows are reality for the prisoners because they have never seen anything else. They do not realize that what they see are the shadows of objects in front of a fire. Much less these objects are inspired by real things outside the cave. They don't understand these are real shadows. The real things are outside the cave which they do not see. So here, then it is assumed that one prisoner is freed. So what will happen to him? He gets up, his chain is broken, he is freed. Reluctantly he gets up, looks around and sees the fire. Behind the rock they were tied. The light would definitely first hurt the eyes because he has not looked into the fire but only at the shadow. So it will be very difficult initially for him to see the objects. Then slowly he will get accustomed to the light of the fire. He will see what is in the cave. And what he sees is real, instead of the other version of the reality which he believed. And in this pain, initially he may try to avoid the fire. He will be afraid of it, the light and the fire. And he will try to run away from it back to what he is accustomed to, the shadows. So he would turn to the things he has been used to, away from the things which are new. Then if someone would drag him by force up to the rough ascent, into the cave entrance, steep way up, somebody has to climb to the cave entrance. It's a steep way, very difficult. But if someone could help this prisoner, the prisoner whose chains were broken, who was afraid to see the fire, if somebody could try to break that, drag him to the entrance of the cave and drag him to the light of the sun, the prisoner would be angry and in pain to see the sunlight. He would not even see the light of the fire. And to see the sunlight, he would be terribly afraid, he will be hurt, his eyes would pain, and he will be angry. The radiant light of the sun would blind him. But slowly, if he is forced to stand there, his eyes would adjust to the sunlight. First he will see only shadows, gradually then he can see the people, the real things, trees, water. He'll be astonished. He may realize slowly that what he has seen till now are only shadows. The reality which he thought was true was not real at all. The reality now he sees outside in the sunlight is the truth. And the world outside is superior to the world he is accustomed, the shadows which he has experienced. And he would rush back to the cave to tell the other prisoners to break free from the chain and come back and see the world. And it will be a blessing to see that change. And he would pity other prisoners. The compassion would drive him to do that, to bring to the light his fellow prisoners who are all living in the shadows. But when he comes back, since he was in sunlight and he enters back again into the dark cave, his eyes would be blinded temporarily. He would not be able to see anything. And maybe the prisoners who were chained into the rock inside the cave, they would think this man has become blind because he went outside. So that should be banished. It has harmed him. And they should not undertake such a journey because it is going to hurt them. That will be their conclusion. And they may get angry and they may kill even somebody who is trying to get them out of the cave. So this is the hypothetical situation Plato says. And we will see the symbolism again. We have initially seen that. Again we will look into detail the symbolism. So this allegory contains many forms of symbolism used to instruct the reader in the nature of perception. The cave represents the superficial reality. The cave represents the superficial reality. It also represents ignorance, as those in the cave live accepting what they see at the face value. So cave is the superficial reality and it also represents the ignorance. And those living in the cave, accepting what they see at a face value. Ignorance is further represented by the darkness that engulfs them, because they cannot know the true objects that form the shadows, leading them to believe that the shadows are true forms of objects. So they believe the shadows are the real objects because ignorance, which is the darkness, engulfs them. The chains that prevent so here darkness is related to darkness is representing the ignorance. So that is another symbolism. Cave represents the superficial reality. Darkness represents the ignorance. And the chains that prevent the prisoners from leaving the cave represent that they are trapped in the ignorance, as the chains are stopping them from learning the truth. So sayings are their attitudes which entraps them to the ignorance, stopping from learning the truth. The shadows which are cast on the wall of the cave represent the superficial truth, which is the illusion of reality. The shadows are the one the prisoner sees. The superficial reality is the one we all see. We are all the prisoners of this superficial reality. The freed prisoner represents those who understand the physical world is only a shadow of the truth. And the sun that is glaring in the eyes of the prisoners represents the higher truth of ideas. The light further represents wisdom, as even the paltry light that makes it into the cave allows the prisoner to know the shapes. So the light is wisdom, the sunlight is wisdom, the small firelight at least a little bit of knowledge which casts the shadow and makes the people to know at least the shadows, the shapes. So the smaller light represents the knowledge and the sunlight represents the wisdom. So this is the allegory. So if you are able to understand, if you are able to realize the wisdom, then you understand that we are living in a cave of ignorance, chained to that ignorance. We think the superficial reality is the reality. The truth which is outside is something greater. So this is the whole of Plato's cave theory. With this we'll end this episode. Stay with me for another episode. Subscribe to my channel. Share this video. Thank you.